Logan, the Layman Critic here with my colleague, Terry, the Movie Man.
It's my name now.
Yeah, we're still figuring that one out.
Someday.
Yeah. Today on our podcast, which again, name pending, we're going to be talking about top 10 comic book movies, or more specifically, like superhero movies. This is going to be.
You have your guidelines up?
I do have my guidelines up. We because there's so many good comic book movies. I mean, even when I made this list, it was a huge headache trying to come up with everything, because even with the criteria that I set, it's like, I don't know. This is like, this is really rough. Like, so my criteria was that, one, it has to be based on a property that originated as a comic. So something like The Shadow wouldn't count because that started off as like in pulp and radio. It has to be a live action movie. So that rules out Batman Mask of the Phantasm or Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which are both good movies. But the character has to be a superhero or a crime fighter. There's some wiggle room in that. I mean, you could maybe argue something like, I don't know, like The Rocketeer or Dick Tracy or something like that, since they're both originated as comic books and they kind of have a crime fighter feel, but they're not superheroes per se. And this one, the last one, I said that the property should be known widely, so popularity shouldn't be limited to one particular country. This one, I'm kind of regretting having it on there, and I'm not even sure if I really stuck to it the best. So if the stuff you come up with on your list doesn't necessarily meet that particular qualification, it's fine, because honestly, I don't think that a couple of mine probably don't either. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. All right. So just some context here. I was kind of surprised with myself when I made this list, like what I considered my top 10, because it's not a lot of, I guess, what you'd call the most popular comic book movies. But if I guess I can defend myself, because I'm probably going to lose a lot of credibility right off the bat here. But my number 10 is X-Men First Class.
Okay.
I just, for some reason, I love that movie. I think like the origin story behind it, the kind of the relationship between Xavier and Magneto was just super intriguing, and then the way that it ended, and the color. I think like the color of it was super appealing, like the 60s vibe.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Just felt like a comic book movie. Like I enjoyed the other X-Men movies, but they're just so gray. You know what I'm saying? Like
especially the first three.
Yeah, it's just so. And I know once they introduced like the younger cast, it got a bit more color and life to it. But this one just stuck out to me, and it's one that I think if I see it on TV or something, I would stop and watch it. I don't know how it was received critics wise or box office, but it was one of the last ones I saw, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so. I'm with you. You really don't need to argue the case for this one, because I honestly I had considered putting it on my list. It was sort of like a toss up between putting that in or Days of Future Past. Those are both really good movies. It's funny because the X-Men movies are so hit and miss. Like the first two movies are pretty good. The third one, I know a lot of people hate it. I enjoy it. It's probably the weakest of the three. And then
it's got a lot of flaws, but it's enjoyable.
The Wolverine films aren't that great for the most part, except for Logan. Logan's really good.
Because it's got your name.
That's exactly. Yeah, that's the only reason.
Never seen the movie otherwise.
Yeah, I just like the title. It's like, okay, yeah, this is a good movie.
Clearly one of the best.
Oscar material right there. And like with the newer cast, like the first two movies are good, and then the last two are not good at all. Like Dark Phoenix. I don't know if you saw Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix it's really not a good movie. It's I mean, there's some cool stuff with Magneto, but apart from that, the movie's just a train wreck. It really, it was the death rattle. I mean, you could see the writing on the wall with Disney purchasing Fox. So it seemed like they weren't even trying at that point.
And that's, with Marvel now, because they're going to be doing the future X-Men movies, I believe.
Yes.
I hope that they kind of take a page out of First Class. And First Class was directed by somebody else.
Yeah,
Matthew Vaughn.
Yeah, Matthew
So
Vaughn.
it wasn't even Brian. Yeah, so I think it added a much-needed twist to it. It wasn't, and I love Wolverine's cameo in it.
Yeah.
That's yeah. But yeah, I think it's got a lot of a lot with the characters, a lot of character development, and then it also feels like a comic book movie. Like there's a lot of comic book movies that don't feel like a comic book movie, and it's almost kind of too realistic, where the idea is kind of ridiculous,
Yeah.
Where this one kind of, I think, plays well on both sides. So, number 10.
Okay, number 10, X-Men First Class.
No fight.
What I had in my first one on my number 10, and okay, so what you were saying was, as far as like how you were making your picks, they weren't necessarily movies that were popular. But as I had said, I really agonized over this list, and I guess my basis for making my list, it was sort of, I tried to primarily pick things that I thought they could be popular, but didn't need to be popular necessarily. It was more about what they contributed to that genre, like how they were trailblazers, if you want to call it that. If they did something interesting and tried something new, or were able to make the genre move forward in some way. So my first choice is probably, it wasn't a successful film, but I picked The Punisher, the one with Thomas Jane.
Okay.
Jonathan Hensleigh directed it. I think it's a good film where it's kind of got, talking about combining realism with a comic book vibe to it. I think that movie does a pretty good job juggling the two. I think it's a good homage to like sort of the revenge vigilante type films of like the 70s, like stuff like Dirty Harry or Death Wish or French Connection. It's like the sort of urban justice type of thing, and it's not a perfect film. I really don't think that John Travolta should have been the bad guy in it. He's not. He's just kind of goofy. But like the one scene with Kevin Nash playing the Russian, this big hitman guy, and just the fight in the apartment, he just will not die. He's beating the crap out of the Punisher, and it's great. Like he pulls out a gun from a compartment, and the Russian smashes the gun and bends the barrel, and Punisher looks and he's like, okay, well, I guess I'm not using that. Or he throws a grenade over at him, and the Russian like bats it back into the room, and he has to duck into a bathtub or something. I
love the scene. I forget who he's talking, but he does like the takes the popsicle and like puts it against the and they freak out, but it's not actually hot.
Mm-hmm.
That was like a clever scene.
It's
been a really long time since I've seen it, but I remember thinking the first time I saw it, it was a really good movie, and I was surprised that it didn't get a lot of attention at the time. But when was that made? That was around Spider-Man 2, wasn't it?
2004, I think. Here, I'll look it up real quick. But I mean, it was an early Marvel film. I think the only movies at the time that Marvel themselves, well, I don't know. Yeah, it was 2004.
Punisher's a hard one to. I think it's a hard comic book movie to really make because. What's that?
To get right.
Yeah, I mean to get right, but like it's not something like it's a very violent character. and it's it's hard to like put it in like if they're doing it in like this Marvel Cinematic Universe now, like where would he fit? You know what I'm saying? Like so violent and so just different than any other character. Even Blade, like Blade's a different one too. Like most comic book heroes don't kill people.
I had almost considered putting Blade on here because that was like the first successful Marvel property put on film.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too because Blade 2 was one that I used to love when it first came out, and then recently heard that it's not a very good movie, so I was kind of bummed about it. I used to love it, but yeah, it's been a while since I've seen that one. But yeah, I could see where Punisher would be. Thomas Jane, I thought he did a really good job.
Yeah, I think they did the reboot Punisher Warzone, and I didn't think it was as good. It's a very different type of film. It's almost like a splatter film. It's much more violent. I don't know that the quality of it is as good, but I thought Ray Stevenson was a decent Punisher, and obviously, I never watched the Netflix show for Punisher, but you're separated for John Bernthal. He looked pretty good in the part. He looked like he might have done the full justice.
Yeah, I've never seen the show, but I saw season 2 of Daredevil, and he was awesome in it, outstanding. Like I thought he had the perfect balance of just kind of badass meets sympathetic, for why he's doing it. Getting revenge on all these people, and I think the balance between I don't know. It seems almost like Punisher needs another character to balance him out, or else it's just a straight up revenge movie. So if you're putting him in like a comic book movie, it almost needs another character to like kind of try and stop him to make it feel less intense. Yeah. So I don't know how they did the show with just him, but I liked what they did with Daredevil because he like ties him up and he's gonna kill somebody. He's gonna like a sniper shot, and Daredevil's trying to reason with him, and that just worked. That's a bummer that show kind of. I think I don't think that they're gonna make another.
I think Netflix is there. I think they're done with it. They pulled the plug on all of those. Okay, so what's your number 9?
Number 9. All right, so this is where it gets kind of shocking. This is where I kind of shocked myself a bit. So again, a lot of movies that could be here, but I actually really, really enjoyed Captain America: The First Avenger.
Oh, okay.
And again, that's another one that I don't know that people. Yeah, I know. I was kind of surprised when I was making this list. I had number 9. I think actually this one was the last one that I put on the list. I filled up like my top 4, and then put in other ones, and then this spot was just kind of vacant. But no, I love the story of him, just kind of being like this dweeb, basically, this just wimp that is really patriotic and really. Wants to be a good person, and he's the transformation scene is really good. And I knew Captain America was never a comic book character that I would have put on like a top 10 list of,
Oh yeah, sure.
But I think, after the movies, I really enjoyed that character. So it's a bummer that they're not going to be making anymore. But I for this one, I thought it was a little slow, I think, is probably a complaint that some people have. But I love the story, and then the ending was really kind of sad.
Mm-hmm.
He wakes up after 70 years, and he was like, I'm waiting for a dance or something, or a date.
Yeah.
But it kind of had a mix. Yeah. Now, is that one that you think wouldn't be on this list at all, or?
I don't know that I would put it on the list. I think. I mean, it's an entertaining film, and I like what they did with it. Because I think Captain America is a hard character to make into an enjoyable character. Just he's kind of has the same problem with as Superman does, where he's a little bit too good. So like he's sort of the relatability or the interesting aspects of him are kind of not there.
Yeah.
But also I think too, I think that the other films that Captain America is in, I think that they're actually, I prefer those. I think that they do more interesting things with the story and themes and stuff like that. So I personally, I wouldn't put it on the list, but so.
Okay. I think too, from like an origin story standpoint, I kind of dug his origin story, like who he was before he became Captain America. That I think that's part of it, and it carries through on all the other movies. And he just he like maintains that same person throughout. Like he's still like that do the right thing type of.
Yeah, I was surprised with the first film, and even just like as the Marvel films progressed, how they didn't. That movie is it's not cynical. At least the character isn't cynical. It doesn't treat his patriotism in a like condescending way. Like like you said, he's a good person. He wants to be a good person.
Yeah.
It's like a heroic quality, and they don't treat it in a way that's mocking, which is very surprising today. It's like any sort of patriotism or anything like that is kind of looked at with skepticism. So that is one thing about that film in particular, and some of the other ones generally, that
you know what his is that his original origin story, like from the comic? Does he even have one?
I think okay, so the character didn't originate with Marvel. But I think the origin itself came from Marvel. Like I think they bought the character, or that somehow they acquired the character, because like the whole thing with him punching out Hitler, that was before. I'm pretty sure that was before Marvel acquired the character. That was in comic books that were made before that.
Okay.
So I don't know that he was a quote unquote superhero per se. Like I don't know that he had powers or anything like that, or super strength. I don't.
And then one thing, like I agree with your comparison with like Superman, because he's kind of Marvel's Superman. But I think that had they gone the route of Superman, just this kind of, I guess one thing about the Superman films always bothered me is he just always had a power for whatever situation was going on. He was kind of able, like when he spins around the world, kind of reverse. I guess Captain America didn't feel as invincible, I guess, but I don't know. It just it's he's felt like more of a person than Superman did. I mean, Superman's technically
an alien.
I don't know. I think that they did a really good job with that origin story, where it could have been just kind of just a setup film for the Avengers,
Yeah.
So that was a surprise for me. I shocked myself making this list. And your number 9? My
number 9 is this might be a controversial one for some people. Watchmen. That movie was kicked around for a long time to try to get made, and it was kind of considered for a while to be like unfilmable. It was just, there was so many different writers and some directors that wanted to make the movie. Like Terry Gilliam at one point wanted to make it, which is kind of weird thinking about it now. But they just, for whatever reason, they couldn't get the script down to where it was a faithful adaptation. Like they wanted to set it in present day, and they wanted to change things. It was just like, Watchmen is a good example of like a adult comic made faithful. Like it's with a few exceptions, it's pretty much a spot on adaptation of the graphic novel. and I really like that. And it doesn't really pull its punches with the characters as far as just how awful some of them are, like the comedian or even Dr. Manhattan with his just very detached personality from how he views humanity and how he's becoming increasingly less human after having gained his powers. And I like the fight scenes in it and stuff. And I know Zack Snyder gets a lot of crap for his filmmaking techniques, but I think that he did pretty well with that movie.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a really long time since I've seen it, so I almost feel like I can't say too much about it. But yeah, no, it was actually one that I had considered putting on this list, but because it's been such a long time since I've seen it, I decided to. But now they're making a TV show, aren't they? Or
HBO's already done it, I guess.
Okay.
I haven't really heard much about it. I should ask my nephew. I'm sure he's seen it because he loves. He's a big comic book guy. So.
Now, have you read the comic?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I really liked it. It's a good graphic novel. I still need to read V for Vendetta. I have it in my it's it's the same author. I like that movie. It's not on my list, but I do like that movie too.
So I'm looking up Watchmen here. Guess what it's rated on Rotten Tomatoes, or what percent you got? I'm kind of blown away. 64%.
Okay.
That's like really shocking.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised it's not lower because I know there's people that really don't like that movie.
Yeah. 3.5 hours.
Yeah, and that's not even the longest cut of the movie. There's a longer cut.
It's not, well, I guess it's a fairly long book, but yeah, I could definitely see putting that on. I got to put that on my list to rewatch.
Number 8.
Okay, so number 8 is one of my childhood favorites, Batman Returns.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is another one I wrestle with being a bit higher on the list. Yeah, I mean, there's, I guess not a lot to say about it. I mean, Danny DeVito is amazing.
Yes.
Michelle Pfeiffer is amazing. Christopher Walken's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I love the kind of like super dark Catwoman character, just and kind of the weird relationship with Batman she had. But yeah, I mean, Danny DeVito, like, talk about like almost being made for for a role. I mean, who else can? I think who's that? Colin Farrell is supposed to be playing the Penguin.
I don't know. That's the first time.
Yeah, which is really weird. But yeah, this one was definitely a favorite as a kid. I mean, I don't
know that. I think it took Tim Burton to make, or even just we'll say the writers, even to make the Penguin an interesting villain for a serious Batman film.
Yeah,
because it's such a ridiculous character. I mean, and there's things in the movie that are kind of silly, but it doesn't like the whole thing with like the penguins with the rocket launchers and stuff like that. Like, it's obviously kind of goofy, but it's offset by how dark some of the stuff is in the movie with the penguin. Like the fact that he wants to like abduct all the firstborn in Gotham and kill them. Like, yeah, pretty bleak. Like, I mean, the one clown that like says like killing kids is gonna like he kills them.
Well, yeah, you can definitely see where Batman Forever, Batman and Robin came from, because it started to kind of, I guess, the goofiness was there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a much darker film. when you look underneath just the silliness. But
if it hadn't been for those merchandising tie-ins, you probably would have had more dark Batman movies, but they had to make that deal with McDonald's to have those toys. I still have them around my house somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, we appreciated it as kids, but
Yeah.
as adults, not so much. So yeah, that's so you think too low on the list? Or should you not say yet?
Yeah, let's go back to that one, because
Okay.
I got some stuff about Batman that I want to talk about later. So
Okay.
okay, so my number 8 is the Avengers.
Oh wow. Okay.
I think, like, that's, to my knowledge, that is the first successful, like, crossover superhero movie. I don't know of any other offhand. At least like big budget theatrical crossover movie where you had all these films building up to this point with the characters, and they finally get together and team up, and it's balanced pretty well. The characters, get their screen time.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a good villain. I mean, it has Loki, which I'd argue, other than Thanos, I think Loki's probably that's one thing with the Marvel films. I don't find them to be particularly strong when it comes to their villains. I find them to be largely forgettable.
Yeah.
But in that case, Loki was a good choice. Yeah, and it's just a really fun movie, and got like really good effects and action, and the dialogue is it's a fun comic book movie. I don't know how
it had a nice balance of being I guess silly comic booky and serious, like it a little bit of it was kind of a stretch with the death of that one character.
kind of
motivates it. Like, he had your cards, like he was like, it almost felt like kind of they're all not getting along and they need some motivation, and
it was a bit contrived.
Yeah, exactly. So but yeah, I agree. I think as far as crossing over, doing all those characters and making it work, they did a really good job. And that's the actors too who played those superheroes. I mean, they're all great, and it just kind of made it work. And not to mention, like, all these movies going back to like the origin stories were all made for that movie,
Yeah.
So it's like they were planning it from the get-go.
I remember at the time them talking about that, reading like how, at the time the only 2 movies that had been out were Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, and Thor was on the way. And hearing that, like, Marvel's plan was that they were gonna make an Avengers movie, but they were gonna make all these superhero movies first, that they all had to be successful in order for them to make it. And I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, that's gonna work out fine. And here we are, years later, tons of movies, like probably like 2 movies every year or something like that.
Yeah, it's a huge
Infinity War and whatever the last one is, the name escapes me at the moment.
Endgame.
Endgame, yeah, thank you. Yeah, like making like huge bucks in box office. I mean, yeah, I'm surprised, but I mean, it's cool. I do have some superhero fatigue, but the movies are, pretty consistent as far as being entertaining.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily, and I think too, like, once you've seen all of them, then you can go back to the ones that you liked and not feel like you're missing anything, because you already know kind of the idea of it. I never feel like I've watched them all completely out of order. As a matter of fact, the Avengers was the first movie I saw in that universe. So I've seen them all completely out of order, but now that I've seen them all, it's like I kind of you understand the the whole timeline, so you don't really need to watch them all in order. It's definitely one of the best as far as crossovers, and I think that they've tried it other times. I wasn't a huge fan of Age of Ultron.
No, yeah, I didn't care for it that much either.
Yeah. That's the thing too. We tried to recreate how that worked, how the first Avengers worked, and then you hear like there's all this stuff in the background, all these issues, and you're like, is that just something that they kind of created as like a safety net? Like, oh, this movie didn't turn out so good. Well, there was issues with just
Yeah, who knows?
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I almost had put Infinity War on here instead of the original Avengers, but I think the fact that the Avengers was like the first successful crossover movie, I think to me that seemed like, and it's also more I think as its own film it stands better, whereas like Infinity War is clearly it's a two-parter. But on to number 7. What do you have?
all right, so another huge one of I guess my childhood, you would say, the first Spider-Man.
Okay, that's funny because that's literally the same movie that I have on my number 7.
Is it really? I was just about to say I feel like we won't get any the same. So
Yeah, that's funny. Literally the exact number and everything. That's funny.
Yeah, no, there's a kind of revolutionized comic book movies.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It was definitely different than anything at the time, and still very bummed about the I don't know if you'd call it the costume or the
Green Goblin, you mean?
Yeah,
looking like a Power Rangers villain. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I understand it though. I mean, it's I guess it's easier. I forgive it. I don't I don't watch it and hold, but yeah, I think the way that it was shot was Sam Raimi directing it, like it added so much to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Spider-Man is just such a great character too. Just him trying like everything with Uncle Ben, and then him going to school and then trying to survive, make money, and then he's Spider-Man. Like it's got so many layers to it, and you sympathize with it. You can relate to a certain extent. So I think they nailed it on every level with this one. Yeah.
I think I mean we had talked about this just the other day, like how if this film had been made before, it would not have been good. Like they just they wouldn't have been able to make it. And just to let the audience listening in on some of our film school history, we had a production management class, and our instructor was Catherine McDermott, who did she was production manager on I think it was the first 2 Spider-Man films. I know she didn't do the third one, and she was talking about how when they first started working on this movie, they had to sit down with like special effects guys and say, it's like, okay, well, how are we going to make this movie? Like, how is this going to look and everything? Like, we kind of take it for granted because of how far we've come since then. But like, if you imagine making a Spider-Man movie in the 90s with like all the web swinging and everything, like it would have looked like garbage. It would have sucked. It would have been terrible. So just in that respect, I mean, and again, I had mentioned how I thought that my list was based off of what these films contributed to the genre. I think in terms of special effects and spectacle, Spider-Man was really groundbreaking in that regard. And it's just a really it's a really good like comic booky movie. It's very it doesn't take itself too seriously. It has kind of that gee whiz sensibility to it, which
it's got an underlying like legit story to it.
Yeah, and I think it came out like at the perfect time.
Yeah.
Like you had it's like 9/11 had just happened months before, and so I think there really needed to be something with a little more optimism and lightheartedness to it. And
Well, I've seen it on some like greatest movies of all times list. I think because of exactly what you're saying. Just
okay, yeah.
its place in history of what it did.
Now, do you remember the first trailer that came out with the movie?
I don't. Like I remember exactly where I sat in theater when I saw it. But no, I don't remember the trailer.
Okay, well, like the trailer, like you don't know that it's a Spider-Man movie when it first starts, but there's like this bank heist taking place. These people break in and they're holding up the place, and then they're taking off in a helicopter, and suddenly the helicopter gets caught, and then I'm basing this completely off of my memory, but it turns out that it's caught in a web and it's tied. Here's the kicker: it's tied on cotton web that's been spun between the Twin Towers.
Okay, yeah.
So shortly after 9/11 happened, obviously they pulled that trailer. They couldn't use it anymore, but you can find it online somewhere. But that was, yeah. I mean, that was like a big deal at the time when it came out. It's like, oh, Spider-Man's coming out, sweet,
Yeah. I remember, when the third movie came out and you saw Venom in the trailer. I remember calling a friend of mine at like 10 o'clock on a school night. I was like, "Did you see it in the trailer?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "You got to watch TV. It might be on again."
Only knew how disappointing it was going to be.
Yeah. Well, and I think going back to them not knowing exactly how to make it, Sam Raimi was the perfect director for it, because when you hear like what he did with Evil Dead, like camera tricks and stuff like that, he did apply a lot of it to this movie to kind of give it like there's this scene in the final fight between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, and it's just shot so Evil Dead-ish. But it just works. It definitely it's almost like it just took like everything the original Batman did in Batman Returns and just kind of improved upon, and number 7.
Okay, well, since we both had number 7, I will start off and do my number 6.
All right.
Okay, so my number 6, you had mentioned X-Men First Class. For mine, I put X-Men 2, X-Men United.
That was one that was almost on this list for sure.
I think I like the first movie, and it was good, like setup, but I think X-Men 2 is like even better. Like it's an example of like when you have a sequel that's takes what was good about the original and like makes it even better. Like, I love the action in it. I love developing Wolverine's story more. All the stuff with like Magneto, like how you have the one character Pyro, who he kind of is seducing into joining his side, just by sort of catering to his ego. And it's them forming their temporary alliance was cool, because like I love the part when they go into the underground base or whatever it is, and Magneto pulls all the pins on those grenades on the soldiers until they all die, and the next thing you know, the last thing you see is all these pins dropping to the ground.
They made him very fearsome. Like he.
Oh yeah, Ian McKellen was great.
Well,
that part, and Patrick Stewart. Like I think it was surprising how well that they were able to cast those characters with great actors twice, not just once but twice, because you got James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender playing him in their younger days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and the bad guy. I remember at the time before the movie came out being a little concerned. It's like they had a human bad guy. I was like, ugh, I really don't want. I just want like another mutant or something, or superpower bad guy. I just thought it was gonna be kind of lame, but it turned out not to be. Like it worked pretty well, and they had Deathstrike, which was she was pretty cool.
Yeah.
With Kelly Hu playing her, and he had that fight with her and Wolverine. And he injects her with the adamantium, and it's like coming out of her eyes, and yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in that movie. I think of the first three movies, it's probably it is the best one. It's definitely one of the best X-Men films.
Yeah, I think as far as my list goes, that one definitely could have been replaced with a lot of these, especially in the top. Maybe even for the Captain America, the First Avenger. I think, that one definitely improves upon everything in the first one. That was one that, along with Spider-Man, was now the first one was made 99. Or was it 2000?
Oh gosh, I don't. Yeah, it might have been 99.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because this was around the time too where comic book movies were just starting to kind of gain traction again, and
2000. It came out in 2000.
2000. Okay, and then this one was 2002.
Oh, 2003. Okay.
Probably one of the best openings too, with Nightcrawler.
Oh yeah! I can't believe I forgot that. Yeah. It's too bad they didn't bring that character back. They just had him in the one film. I mean, he's in X-Men Apocalypse, but it's just not as. I mean, that movie's like garbage anyway.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. I can't believe I didn't even bring that up. Yeah, that opening is amazing, and Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler, perfect casting. Like I never would have thought to have him as that character, but he played it really good.
I wonder if he had anything to do with, because he's more of a serious actor though, isn't he?
I'm
just surprised that they didn't bring him back. Like that was one when the movie came out, was just a very popular character.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
What about Kelsey Grammer as Beast in 3?
Oh, actually, I thought that was really good casting. Actually, I thought that was.
Did you like? Yeah.
I mean, his voice.
I think he had the right. It was just so like such an odd type. Like everybody freaks out about Heath Ledger as the Joker, but it's like when you hear Kelsey Grammer as Beast, you're like, oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, his voice is like perfect for that character. It just seems very. Yeah.
My number 6 would, and again, this is another one, not surprising, but never would have thought Captain America would be 2 movies on my list, but Winter Soldier.
Okay.
And this kind of goes against everything that I guess I look for in a superhero movie, but like a more serious type of comic book movie. And I think a lot of it too is the Russo brothers, the way that they shoot the action scenes. The Civil War is not on my list, but I thought the action scenes looked great, and same with this one. The way that they shoot the elevator scene, just such a great scene. So it's a nice mix of realism, and then the way that Captain America is, I guess, Chris Evans, the way he plays it just fits. It doesn't feel too out of place. This was one I didn't see. This is one of the last Marvel movies that I saw, but just always heard good things about it.
Mm-hmm.
Was this one that you didn't care too much for, or I forget?
No, I liked Winter Soldier. There's things in it that like to your point about it being a little more serious. I think yeah, it's like it almost has a little bit of thriller vibe to it. Like as
Yeah,
far as like sort of the in like I guess you can say political intrigue behind it.
yeah,
You know, the sort of commentary on like I guess warmongering and those sorts of things. It was a little more um, thematically dense than a lot of Marvel films usually are. So in that
yeah.
respect, I think it was that made it a little more distinctive from the usual output.
That's always a big complaint with the Marvel movies is the color, the grays, the
Yeah,
um, that's another one that has a great opening scene with the like on the boat.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I love the way that they shoot the him throwing the shield and it hitting somebody. It just
I was just thinking
it
that. Yeah.
like you feel it. You can feel that it's and then the whole thing with the Bucky relationship.
Hmm.
Um, now that's yeah, I enjoyed it, and again, it's surprising to me because everybody talks about Iron Man being those films being like the best of the Marvel movies, and I've for whatever reason just I'm always drawn to the Captain America movies. Like I 100% could say my number 9 could either be X-Men 2 or the first Avenger. I mean that's just how weird this list is. Like if I made this list tomorrow, these might all be mixed.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. You ask me like a month from now, I could very well come up with a very different list
yeah,
with some
that's like what we
exceptions.
say about like the Beatles albums. It's like ask me next year and I'll have another year.
Yeah.
That's a podcast yet to come. But all right, we're in the top 5.
Okay, so yeah, it's funny you mentioned Iron Man because my number 5 is actually Iron Man.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah. Robert Downey Jr. Oh my gosh, just
Perfect.
he totally makes that movie. Um,
So had they casted somebody else for Iron Man, would Marvel be as big as it is?
I no, I don't think it would. I
I
really
know
don't.
much. I think he.
I think that so much of Marvel's success, I think, can be laid at the feet of Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah,
Because if that film didn't work, I think their plans, if it had tanked, all their movies probably they would not have been nearly as ambitious. I don't
yeah.
think they would have taken as many risks with their stuff. But yeah, he just somehow that was a perfect storm. And again, it came out at the right time. It's not a movie that really takes itself too seriously, and it helps that he's a good actor in that his delivery of dialogue is very dry. So he's funny without being goofy.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
so like you can have a dramatic scene and have him just say something just very like again like dry humor, and it doesn't like kill the drama of the scene. It works.
Right.
And
Well, and going based off of playing on characters like Captain America or Thor, um, it just works so well because he's like the comic relief, and they don't really understand it, and that's part of again what made Avengers work was the different character dynamics and him mainly. I
yeah,
think.
I this the fact that I think another like major significant thing about this movie is the fact that it's Iron Man. I would probably classify him as a second or third tier character in terms of popularity and importance in Marvel. But with these movies, I think he shot up like to top tier.
Yeah.
The fact that they were able to make, Marvel started their cinematic universe with a second or third tier character, and like was massively successful and was able to pave the way for films that they're still making today, I think speaks to how significant of a picture it is.
Yeah, I agree, and I do think that again, another kind of underwhelming villain.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. It was also kind of, I think, like when The Dark Knight came out,
Mm-hmm.
the second one kind of, it almost felt like they tried to somewhat compete with it a little bit.
Yeah.
It just felt a little like that movie came out and like Iron Man kind of rejuvenated superhero movies, and then The Dark Knight came out and just made things darker again. If you had somebody like what's his name who played in The Incredible Hulk, Norton, yeah, like somebody like him, for instance, and it just didn't work. Yeah, you wouldn't have probably any of these movies. Most of our lists would be different movies, but yeah. My number 5 is The Avengers. I think that we have discussed everything we can about that, but yeah, I think that again, a lot of it is the actors who played these superheroes that made that movie work. But even it's funny too, because even like Spider-Man Homecoming, how he doesn't really have Spidey sense in it.
Yeah.
Then the Hulk in the Avengers can just kind of, I'm always angry, and then he turns into the Hulk.
Yeah.
It's things like certain things like that they kind of mess with, that shouldn't bother me too much, but they do.
Well, that doesn't bother me as much as the Sam Raimi movies having Spider-Man having organic web shooters. That just
yeah. I think a lot of that was probably just like time. Like we have to show him making web. Let's just give it to him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I remember reading an interview with Stan Lee about this, and I guess that goes all the way back to like James Cameron's draft for screenplay when he was going to be working on Spider-Man. He had that in his scripts, so I think it was just a carryover.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that they changed a lot of stuff like that, and then I don't know, because when you look at like Endgame, and then he can't turn into the Hulk, then it just doesn't pay off. I don't know. It's a weird, like I'm not in love with how the Hulk has been treated in the Avengers. It's almost like a part I didn't like in Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, it kind of takes. he has very little. It's almost like they're not making movies for the Hulk, so they're just gonna like give him like this half-ass like storyline.
Yeah.
Where he, but yeah, again, that the Avengers, I think, is a movie that worked, and if that wasn't successful, would have halted things too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe so. Between that and Iron Man, I think that they were very important for the influx of superhero movies. So,
since you had the Avengers for number 5, why don't you go ahead and do number 4?
This might be where it gets controversial. The original Batman.
No, that's not controversial. I have it on my list.
Oh no, but where I have it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, those are fighting words.
Well, yeah, that's one I could guarantee that would be on both of our lists. Yeah, the original, I guess, greatest superhero movie of all time. Not now, but at the time. Yeah, I think it's there's not much to really say other than you know, Jack Nicholson as the Joker just completely worked. Michael Keaton is my favorite Batman. That's one thing that I'm surprised that they, to me personally, haven't gotten right, is another Bruce Wayne Batman combination, because even what's his name from the
Christian
newer
Bale?
films? Who's that?
Christian Bale?
Christian Bale. Yeah, I'm not a fan of him as Batman. But I think as far as Michael Keaton goes, he's Batman and Bruce Wayne to me. Yeah. And I think what's that?
I was gonna say, I know a lot of people don't care for his Bruce Wayne because he's kind of quirky, and it's not as much as like the millionaire playboy thing. But I think a lot of it too is just like, I don't know. One thing that I always sort of point to is if you read like the first few the early issues of Batman, the character is kind of aloof, like Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
He's not really paying attention to things that are going on. So I think that Keaton's interpretation of the character kind of plays into that. And even the fact that, and I know people piss and moan about this all the time about Batman killing people in the Burton films. I really don't care that much. I don't care that he kills people. I don't care that he uses guns, because the early issues, he did both. And he was pretty violent. I mean, there's like this one character who like he's like hanging from a ladder on his like bat gyro, and he like kicks a guy in the head and breaks his neck. Like, yeah, it's. I wouldn't put it past the original Batman to, from the comic books, to turn his Batmobile around just to use the afterburners to kill somebody.
Well, I mean, let's get nuts. If you want to get nuts, let's get nuts.
That's great. Oh, yeah. I mean, talk about controversial casting. I remember so many people got so up in arms about Keaton playing Batman, because everything up till now, most people just knew him as Beetlejuice and Mr. Mom. I mean, he had done some dramatic stuff, but his fame came from doing comedies. So that was so far out of left field, but it worked. And
I think he was, again, like a young billionaire, like kind of what you'd expect, somebody who's slightly goofy, but yeah, I just think it worked. If it whether that's what they intended or not, I think he worked for he was a nice change of pace too, because of how dark it was when he was Bruce Wayne. It was a little bit more lighthearted, I guess. Lighthearted, but yeah.
I liked the look of the film. Like there's like so much. I think there's so much to be said about like how like this. I would say Batman as a comic book movie is absolutely like genre defining. Just what it did for like sort of legitimizing the comic book movie. I mean, you can point to Richard Donner's Superman as making it possible for those movies to get made, but I think Batman really sort of set the standard for it. Just like with the costume design and just like the production values, just like with the city. I mean, it's got this weird sort of futuristic retro. It's like a weird combination of different things. Like you don't know when the film is set. Like it feels like it could be set like not like in the 1940s, but yet you got like people listening to Prince and things like that. You have television, like all these different things. It's like it's set in its own unique world, and yeah, I mean, the Batmobile is awesome. Like I don't think I think they've yet to top that Batmobile. I think it just looks cool. The Batwing, that's pretty cool. And yeah, Jack Nicholson is the Joker. I mean, there seems to be some revisionist history with people, saying, "Oh, I never liked Jack Nicholson as the Joker." I was like, "Oh, shut up." I remember for years, like that's like he was like the person to top as like the best, like not just best Batman villain, but best comic book villain. Like nobody beat Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, so much so it's like anytime you mention the Joker, it's like why have anybody else play him? Like
yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree, and I think again, same as Spider-Man, Tim Burton was the perfect director at the time because he was able to make it dark and then comic booky. Yeah, and it was just it's always odd to me thinking back to when I was younger and my friends were afraid of it.
Yeah.
After the opening scene, tell your friends about me. They're always afraid. Turn it off. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of those movies that I watched over and over and over and over and over again. I had it on tape. It's like there's that movie. There was Ghostbusters 1 and 2, and The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, I know. It's always
a combination of movies to be watching repeatedly. But yeah, there it is.
Yeah, definitely. All right, you're number 4.
Okay, my number 4 is Logan.
Another name plug here. No.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's an example, I think, of taking the comic book movie genre and elevating it, and without trying to make it something that it isn't. I think sometimes films run into that problem where they just kind of make it a little. It can be pretentious, or they're sort of ashamed of the fact that it's a comic book movie. They like you were saying, it's like they sort of see it as ridiculous, so they kind of distance themselves. They took an X-Men character and made sort of a road movie / Western, and it works. I think it works really well. I think it's cool. It's cool to see where Wolverine has, like, how worn down he is, and how even more cynical and just tired from losing friends and things like that. And you're in a world where mutants are basically pretty much, they're an endangered species, I guess you could say. And seeing him like kind of trying to just get by. He's taking care of Xavier, and he's got Caliban as his kind of like his practically like a roommate, I guess you could say. It's like they're starving. He's the breadwinner. And it's really interesting direction to take that character, and just that type of that genre in general. It's very different without abandoning the comic book trappings, I guess.
So this movie coming at a time when like comic book movies really felt dried out. Like, just I think people were almost over it at the time. And this and Deadpool, just was like much needed. And Hugh Jackman was phenomenal in it, but
Absolutely.
yeah, just much needed change, and probably again another thing that saved future Marvel movies was, you know, just people needed something different. This and Deadpool came along and redid it, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and they weren't even. I mean, they're Marvel characters, but they're not even Marvel movies. Is the thing too. But I think the contrast probably was to their benefit. So you know, you had the lighter fare for, you know, more family, you know, oriented entertainment, and then you had those two movies. It was like, well, if you're looking for something a little more edgier and more adult, then here you can have this.
Right. And not to mention people who grew up, I guess technically grew up watching the original X-Men movies. Let's see, wow, that's like 17 years over that span. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if they had stopped, like if they had made, you know, the first, like if they had stopped at Logan, I think that would have been a perfect ending for the series. But I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know if Apocalypse was made before or after Logan.
I thought Apocalypse was made.
Yeah, because the last two, like I said, the last two X-Men movies were just not good. So Logan would have been a perfect time for them to just.
Yeah, Apocalypse was made. So Apocalypse was made before, and then Dark Phoenix was made years after. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense because Logan was the last time he played the character. He makes a cameo in Apocalypse, so. But, yeah, Logan, good flick.
Yeah, definitely.